Welcome back, everybody, to The Dynasty, a podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. I'm Chris Stewart, along with the head coach of the Birmingham Stallions. Yeah, he's our quarterback as well, A.J. McCarron, and also another great national champion in his own right, Trent Richardson, as well. We got new episodes of the show dropping just about every week on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're looking for the show, just go to thedynastybama.com. Also, wherever you're listening, please rate, review, and check us out across social media at The Dynasty Bama. Today, of course, we're diving into what we've learned through a week of spring ball for the Alabama Crimson Tide. We are also going to react to Alabama's NCAA Tournament draw and talk a little bit about the bracket, as everybody does, or will be in water coolers all across the country the first part of the week, and then we're pretending like we're working and we're watching games the rest of the week. Also, SEC win total projections are out from Vegas. And what does the Tide think, or excuse me, what does Vegas think the Tide's going to do this fall? All right, let's get into Bama in spring ball, and we'll start off with AJ, and we're going to talk later in the show, AJ, about what's going on with the Stallions. But let's talk about the Tide right now. Michael Carroll, the right tackle, the only returning starter on the O-line. That's obviously one of the biggest question marks as we look ahead on 2026. We're going to hear from Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator. He's going to shed a little light on what he's looking for and who has stood out early in the spring.
You know, physicality and consistency, I think, are the two staples we got to see. You know, guys being able to execute the game plan and understand the importance of running the ball. And I think that fundamental, belief begins in the spring. You know, just guys understanding that this has to be part of our DNA and to be able to, especially when you have a younger quarterback. I think we saw some of that, obviously, at the end of the season last year with Ty, where we could have helped him out more and taken more off his plate if we could effectively run the ball a little bit more. So this year, obviously that's a big focus. I think that's one of the biggest challenges, like for Coach Clem or any O-line coach. I think during the spring when you're really trying to, especially with so many new pieces, you're trying to find out who the players are, who the guys are, and then trying to get some semblance of gel to happen. But, it starts with Jackson and Michael. And then really, the center position, Racing Delgado's been doing an awesome job at center. I think he's really taking the reins quickly. So excited to see him out there. But Jackson Lloyd's one guy that's, just on the football field, like forget OD, whatever. He has really stood out as a guy that we're going to be really excited about as our left tackle.
All right, Trent, let's start with you. From a running, let's kind of go to the first clip where he's talking about the run game and the physicality. I would imagine as a running back, that's music to your ears.
Yeah, it's definitely music to my ears, but it got to happen. So I mean,
right,
and they got to have a great spring, not a good one, a great spring. Because like I tell everybody that I talk to about it, I love what they do at Bama. I've always been a big fan of it, but a negative 3 yards rushing, I don't give a dang if it's in the first quarter, second quarter, half. But at the end of the game, we got to do something in the run game, especially to help out the throwing game, the quarterback. Those pockets become very small when you cannot run the ball.
So, AJ, they say apparently in these support groups that the first step in fixing a problem is acknowledging that you have one.
Listen, it's funny you mentioned that, Chris. I was literally, the first thing out my mouth was, well, at least we're finally admitting that we had a horrible run game last year. Because when you watch any interview, it's like, oh, yeah, we're fine. We're putting it together and our O-line's doing okay. And that's the first real answer I've heard from this coaching staff from a run game standpoint that I'm like, we're back to telling the truth.
Yeah.
We said it on this show multiple times last year that the run game was horrific. The O-line play was bad, especially when it came to, creating a momentum and presence up front. I'm just glad we're finally at least admitting it and then hopefully diving deep into that thought process and, hey, we got to go out and set a tone early in games. And then the fact that he's talking about, hey, we got to find 5 guys that gel well together. That's another issue I talked about last year until I was blue in the face.
Yeah.
And hell, even when we had Coach DeBoer on, that's the first thing I brought up was, and I think it was probably off air, but I said, hey, there's an issue because when you look at a team and teams that are successful, the biggest brotherhood on that team from a position group standpoint is the O-line. They have to be able to, spend all the time with each other. They're going out to eat all the time. They have to be able to communicate and understand how each other, how they play and what their weaknesses are and their strengths and everything. So hopefully they can find a group of 5 guys that gel well together, that understand each other, and the play shows that. So I'm just extremely happy we're admitting we have an issue.
I mean, the biggest thing you said though, like people don't realize, like O-line, like our O-line when we was in school, they watched the most film. They stayed the latest, and other than the quarterbacks, like they stayed the latest in the building. And so, like to see that, and like, man, sometimes I used to be just peeping out the doors. I don't want to go home until they go home, and them guys used to go home to about 11 o'clock. I'm like, man, I gotta go study hall and go do some homework or something. Like, I got a life outside of this too, but them guys was together all the time.
Let me ask you this. How much of, I guess, the lack of public criticism that you talk about from the staff standpoint was, because I've heard coaches talk about this for years, different sports, different things. When guys aren't good, they know it. Most of the time, they know they're not good. And they know they're not getting it done because the numbers are the numbers and the film's the film. At the same time, when you're hearing it everywhere else, you got to hear from somebody that believes in you. And, I wonder how much of it was that. I don't know. But I wonder how much of it, what you're talking about is in them admitting it, probably was admitted in staff meetings and admitted maybe behind closed doors with the players themselves, but they're not going to do it publicly because of what those guys are probably hearing from everybody else.
No, I totally agree with that. I guess my issue with it, at some point they need to be called out, and I felt like it wasn't a call out at any point. It was more of a babying process of, hey, we got to do things better. But like, instead of saying, listen, we were terrible up front, we got whipped up front the entire game. Like at least one interview, like post game, that just says the truth. And maybe that lights a fire under them.
Yeah.
I also think there's a lot of tentativeness from a standpoint of, in this era of trying to be best friends with guys and not really coach them like old school, like we were back in the day. That's the tough part because they could just leave whenever.
Yeah.
And now the rules have changed, so it should be a little better. But that's the biggest concern. But Chris, I totally get what you're saying from a sense of, they're catching it from the outside world, and then as a coach, you got to try to find a happy medium. I get that for sure.
Let's go to the other part of what Ryan was talking about, the line, and in particular, keeps talking about redshirt freshman Jackson Lloyd, calls him the guy at left tackle. What does that say, Trent, when you're already talking about a 6'7", 317 guy, the guy after only playing 41 snaps all of last year? Is it he's that good? Is it we ain't got no other option? Or is it maybe a combo of the two? Time will tell.
Yeah, time would tell. Because it's one of those things where, like, he might be the only guy that they're comfortable with because he's been around the longest, right?
Yeah.
And so
And need him to be there.
yeah, and not saying that he's not talented, but at the same time, like maybe the offensive scheme didn't fit him. Maybe they switch it
Right.
up a few things that that can play towards his strengths. But it's hard to say right now. Like I said, they got to have a great spring, man. And so you won't be able to tell until we actually get eyes in game situation. Because all the preseason stuff you're gonna have, the rating the line and all this other stuff. Hell, they was ranked number 1 last year, coming in too. All American preseason All Americans and all this other stuff. And to me, I don't know if it's stat wise. I feel like we finished last in line. I don't, when it comes to stat wise. So it's just one of those things, man, where, and that's going back to what AJ just kind of said, and the question that you just asked before the end. A lot of people not being real with themselves. A lot of people, and I get it. It is hard, but man, we had a guy named Rolando McClain who was gonna call you out every Thursday. He was gonna, I would get up there when it was my turn. AJ got up there when it was his turn. You had the guys just gonna call you out. And just, you got to take it. Like, you want to be the best, you got to bring the same energy every week, every day. And so, man, to not have that in-house, it's hard, man, because when you're listening to the media, when you're listening to the outside world, when you're letting the critics take the game from you, it's tough, man. It really is. And so I get it. Coaches got to kind of, play both sides. But at the same time, man, I think it's a disservice to the game and to these kids when you can't be real with them.
AJ, Jeremy Bernard, Isaiah Horton, Josh Cuevas accounting for almost 1,800 yards receiving and close to 20 touchdowns last year. Ryan Coleman-Williams, as he is now known, and up and down at best. How important not only for him to make strides on the field, but also figure out, can't be the youngest guy anymore, but how important that he truly becomes a leader.
People got mad at me last year because I called him out after the first game. Then 2 weeks into it, it's finally Kirk Herbstreit, all these other announcers start calling it out. I caught flack from, people in Saraland, Mobile, Ryan's dad, family members, friends. Never said anything bad about the kid. I think he's a hell of a player. I said that multiple times. I expect big things from him because I know what the kid can do. But he has to have more focus this year. And if a name change brings that, then a number change brings that, whatever works, but you got to have him step up this year because he is he's a 3-year starter. Last year was a major letdown for him from every aspect in the game. I think people question, hey, why isn't he playing? Is he leaving? Is he going somewhere? I mean, you saw his snaps go down tremendously last year. And he just wasn't a reliable guy I'd heard, of course, catching with his hands, but also I think knowing the offense and knowing checks and everything. And the other guys could just do more. And I think that 1 year, and I say all that to say this, I think that sophomore slump is a great reset for him to get back to the basics and get back to work on things that he knows and everybody else knows that he needs to get better at. And I think it's a great thing for him. I think that down year will be more of a positive going into this year than ever before. And I'm excited to watch Ryan. I think he's going to have a great year. But you definitely got to have him be the guy that is the most reliable in that room.
Let's, Trent, hear from Coach DeBoer talking about this topic. Then I want to get your reaction.
Well, Ryan, you maybe can find someone, but just off the top of my head, he's probably played as many snaps as anyone on our offense. And, that's, again, the turnover that speaks to that. But he's taken that on. He's taken on a leadership role, and in order to lead and be vocal like he has, and it's in him. And he just brings an energy and enthusiasm that you guys all see. It's nonstop. But in order to do that, you have to do the work. And he's always done the work. And I really feel like he's seeing an opportunity. He continues to raise the work, raise the level that, and be efficient in it. Because, he's always worked. But I think where he's focusing that attention, it's really intentional. And so it's great to see his leadership capabilities. Last year, I really felt like he took a great step, and now it's on another level. And so our team needs that. Our offense needs that.
Trent, what do you think?
I think that when it comes, and I suggest they were talking about Ryan. When it comes to Ryan, he is the OG in the room now. It's his third year, and he's been a starter since his freshman year. And so, to me, man, I'm one of those guys because I've seen the sophomore slump. Julio went through it. But like I tell people, like, only thing Julio was different. Julio, he had me and Mark Ingram back there. And so you had a run game that was, he had to adjust to. But when it come down to it, man, Julio next year, he went for 1,200 or something, like 1,200, something like that. Played with a broken hand, with a plate in his hand, with a broke foot, cracked foot. But the talent is there. The athleticism is there. He got all that. Like, man, listen, do what you do. Play your game at the best of your ability. Whatever got you there at Bama, whatever you did to get there, times two. Just go out there and be a dog, man. All the naysayers, all, everybody that's, not talking about you in the way that you want to be talked about. Man, when I was in school, like, I didn't turn on ESPN. I did not turn on the media. I just wasn't for the hearing the outside word, and that was something we preached in the building. And so, man, like that, and that can kill a kid mental. So, he has taken on everything that you can possibly throw at him, as far as criticism and the guy going from the starter to one of the best receivers or athletes on the field to somebody running down on punt. And so, man, he's seen all of it. And so, man, just put it all together and just remember what got you here.
It seems to me the biggest piece of all of this, the best sign of all of this, is the fact that he's there. It would have been really easy. You talk about the sophomore slump. It would have been real easy in this day and age for him to go, you know what? I just need to change the scenery. And I'm going to try it somewhere else. I'm going to work somewhere else and try to get this done. I know what I can do, but I need to get away.
Yeah, we say
a lot of
that,
people may have understood that.
I understand where you're coming from,
can't,
Chris, but is he going to pass up what he's getting paid at Alabama? Do you think he could have gone anywhere else and got paid more?
I don't know. That's a great question, because I don't know how the deals work. I don't know if his deal dropped this year at Alabama. I have no idea. Don't know. But my whole point is, I think it's a good starting point towards the things you guys talked about and what he said as well. The fact that he would just be there, because one way to deal with criticism is go somewhere where there's nowhere to be criticized, because you ain't done anything anywhere. You ain't done anything wrong. You ain't done anything right, but you ain't done anything. You couldn't fail expectations because there hadn't been any yet. So that's what I was talking about. Simply the reset. I think that is a sign of maturity. The fact that he's still there in a time where it would be easy to go, and a lot of others may have.
Yeah. But when I talk about, when you hear that type of message, it's one of those messages to me, like, man, you can't just run from your problem. It's almost like
I
a
agree.
marriage.
And
that's why I'm saying the kid's mentally strong. He's mentally strong in the situation he's been through, because simple fact that he is there, and they still talking about the kid, and the thing that that he's really been blessed with, the expectation for him is not, oh, he's the 17-year-old, or he's the guy that, reclassed up and coming, that all that stuff is out the door now. And so, you're a vet and you're a 3-year guy there now. And so, I think for him, man, just go and ball out. Just play your game. Work your tail off. Just work. Like that work is going to, because I'm telling you, man, AJ said all the time, once you get that money, man, to get comfortable. And not saying, he got comfortable, but at the same time, man, we seen a difference. And so, man, it's one of those things where, man, the best thing for me was to go play in Canada. I got away from everybody, the crowd, the noise, the family, the friends. I had to be stripped all the way down, and it reset my mind. But I didn't choose to go to Canada.
Yeah.
It was just because the functioning wasn't there in the league because of the situations. And so the best thing for me, and so anytime I put on a jersey, like I had to go back to all right, this is what I was protected from, and this is why I need to keep my, boundaries with, everybody and everything else, and just shut everything out.
Let me go one more route real quick before we wrap this segment up, because we're talking hoops and the NCAA tournament the next. But A-Day will look more like A-Day this year, and Coach DeBoer talks about why.
Yeah, I mean, we always want a scrimmage and have a great spring game. Last year, we just had 2 position groups in particular, but just we wouldn't have been able to put on a good show. We needed to get something out of the practices. Unfortunately, that was where we were at a year ago. I think we're in a different spot this year. We really haven't talked about it as a team. We're just focused on what's next. But, we'd love to get out there and have some fun, practice and get better and scrimmage, that's kind of the expectation that we have for that day. Hopefully nothing crazy happens, but that's what I would expect for A-Day.
I heard him in another interview talk about there were, I can't remember if it was tackle, offensive tackle or where, but there was something where they had so many injuries. They didn't have 2 healthy tackles at that time, or whatever the position group was. And it's not like they could shift guys over to do for 2 teams. He said if it's one game, or excuse me, you're only worried about one team, that's one thing. But when you're trying to put guys on both sides, there wasn't a way to split it and really do a game. And it was multiple positions where they dealt with that. So that's why you didn't see A-Day in its traditional form last year. But it sounds like the goal as of today is to get it back. And I don't know how big the A-Day game was for y'all. I know it's huge for the fans, and there comes a point with all that we're doing now in the game, and I'm not talking about players and coaches, but what's dictated with TV and budgets and schedules and all that, there's got to be something there for the fans, and that's a day that I know they love to be back on campus. They love to be a part of it. It's a game atmosphere, but it's more laid back, and there's other things going on around it. I don't know. I know a lot of people are excited to hear that A-Day is going to look like A-Day again.
I think a lot of that has to do with, they can say injuries, but I think a lot of that has to do with the portal from last year and you having 2 windows. And I'm sure there were some injuries, but you also have 105 players on roster. So you have enough guys. Trust me, if we could do a scrimmage with 64 in this league,
yeah,
you can do an inter-squad scrimmage with 105. I think a lot of that has to do with, and they're going to protect it by saying injuries, but there was a lot of fear of losing guys, and it's not just Alabama; it's all over the place. I mean, look at all the schools that got rid of their spring games, right? And they started doing other things instead of it. And so I think the fact that now you're moving to one portal window, and it's set at the, basically the end of the season. I think a lot of that has to do with that. And it probably saves a ton of guys for these coaches where they don't have to go out there and worry to death about, hey, can we actually showcase this guy on ESPN today? Like, each school's going to have probably 2 scouts going to each spring game just to see. And sit in the stands and dress up in Alabama gear, and they work for Tennessee or they work for LSU or whoever, right? And they're going to mark down whoever. I mean, hell, it's done at every level. So I think that's more the issue, but I'm glad to see A-Day come back to its original form. And, I still remember the days of it being 92,000 people at A-Day.
Yeah.
I remember hitting Brandon Gibson in 2010, or maybe it was 09 year. I can't remember, one of those years where we ran Seattle, and I had a 2-on-1, threw it down the right sideline to win the game with like 6 or 8 seconds left. I mean, that's what it's about. So it's awesome. It's an awesome atmosphere for the fans. It allows people to maybe in our community, our great state of Alabama, that can't afford tickets in the regular season, to come out and bring their families, bring their kids to having a special experience and be up close and everything. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
And that's awesome that we're getting back to that.
I agree. All right. When we come back, we're talking hoops. Alabama men's and women's basketball have gotten at-large bids to the NCAA tournament. We'll talk briefly about where things wrapped up for the men in Nashville at the SEC, but also look ahead to what's next for the Tide. Stay with us. This is The Dynasty, a podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Welcome back to The Dynasty, a podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Chris Stewart, AJ McCarron, Trent Richardson back with you again. Wherever you're listening, hope you'll rate, review, and check us out across social media at The Dynasty Bama. And also you can listen on different platforms for the podcast at thedynastybama.com. All right, NCAA Tournament, March Madness. We're midway through the month. And the madness started with conference tournaments, actually some of them a couple of weeks ago, but the SEC this past weekend, great finish to the tournament, some surprises in the semifinals, the matchups that we had there. Ole Miss almost got all the way from day one to the championship game on Sunday, but they lose by one in the semifinals. Ole Miss, guys, a team that upsets Alabama. Crazy. The Rebels never trailed in their first 3 games of the tournament. Finally trailed and ultimately, as we said, lost to Arkansas in the semifinals. But not the way you want to go, one and done. But I also know if you're looking for a positive, rest is vitally important this time of year, guys. And that's something really good, obviously. It's more rest than they want to get, because they're going to go Friday to Friday before they play again. Talk about this Alabama team as they have drawn the number 4 seed, and they will play Hofstra as the 13 seed.
It's going to be interesting. I'll tell you, I remember, hell, it was a couple of weeks ago watching Ole Miss versus LSU at Ole Miss. That was one of the worst basketball games I've ever sat there and watched. And I was like, and we were practicing or scripting for the next day. I can't remember whatever was happening the other day when Alabama was playing Ole Miss. And I kept getting updates, and then I'm like, wait, we lost?
Yeah.
And then I know Ole Miss has talent. Talking to Siski a ton about this Ole Miss team. They have a ton of money into their basketball program and the NIL side, but it's definitely not the way you want to go out, and then not the way you want to start March Madness, but you're in it. You got a shot. I couldn't tell you anything about Hofstra, where the hell they are.
I know where they're going to be.
I mean, for all I know, Hofstra's in Canada, so I couldn't tell you.
I'm not going to challenge you on it as we record this either. Trent, you're welcome to jump in, but if you can tell me,
either,
I'll eat this hat if you can tell me where that is.
Yeah, I can't tell you where they at either. But
Where are they?
Yeah, where are they?
They're
gonna say
going to be in
Jersey.
Tampa.
Oh, Tampa.
They're going to be. No, I didn't say they are from Tampa. They're going to be in Tampa because that's where Alabama's going to play them.
No, well, where is Hofstra at?
Long Island.
I know, Steve. Long
Hey, I was
Island,
close.
New York. Thank you. So forget about it. Thank
picked
you,
up that
Steve
way.
Gorgie, our producer, for fixing it for us. Yeah, Long Island. He even put it on the notes. He had to actually say it on air for us. Yeah, but and they've changed. They used to be, I think they used to be the Flying Dutchman. I think used to be, and now they're the Hofstra Pride. AJ McCarron, you need to walk away from that as quickly as you can. Let's leave that right there. But we will simply say that 13 versus 4 seed, Alabama playing that matchup. Obviously, bad start. And that's one of the things Nate Oats talked about is that you've got to start quicker than they did. They were sluggish and expected Ole Miss to play sluggish, but you let a team that had played back-to-back days and was playing a third straight day get confidence early. And suddenly, when you're ahead and you're never trailing, it's easy to find that energy. But you never gave them a reason to feel tired or worn out. I
think it's one of those things, and not to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
And Coach Nate said something about it, getting guys back and trying to get them in shape, game in shape. It's a difference when you got guys that's injured, and, they fresh, but at the same time, they haven't had the game reps. So everybody know when you're in a game situation, it's full speed or it's full, energy, full speed, even, thinking. When you thinking full speed and moving full speed, and it's a different type of energy out there, man. Like it's different from practicing, it's different from working out. And so, to even start off so slow like they did, I kind of figured like, bro, we in for a long day if we don't close down this lead right now. And we had a couple times we came back and tied, but it was just like they just kept shooting it. They just kept shooting it. And Coach said it on here, man. We got to make sure that defense and I asked him the question about the defense, man. He said, our defense haven't been really, good this year. And, we starting, hit on it a little bit more, at the end of the season. They went on to 8 out of 10?
Yeah, 9 out of 10, actually.
9 out of 10.
Right.
And so I think that's a big part of it too, man. But I've never been a guy to be like, man, well, we ain't played in so long, because I just never had that much of a break. Well, I mean, I guess we had bowl games, but like we had a month off, when it came to the national championship. But my mindset was always, bro, you line up on the other side of the ball, it's full go, and that's just how I was raised. And so I've never got into the, you get sluggish for not playing for so long. I just always feel like, man, you line up with me, you gonna get the best of me you gonna get.
AJ, from a coaching standpoint, I know sports have their own unique things to them, but Coach Saban used to always talk about don't waste a loss. How does Nate Oats ensure that the loss to Ole Miss isn't wasted?
Well, I think it's got to light a new fire under the team. I mean, from a sense of, listen, it doesn't, and Coach Saban always used to say this from a sense of, you don't have to have something bad happen to learn, right? Yeah. Everybody thinks like you have to learn from a mistake, and the mistake being a loss, but no, you can still learn from a win. And I think it's, listen, you've put yourself in a position that you're learning from a loss, and now we have to go with this mindset of, hey, we're going to learn from wins, because if you lose, you're out.
Right.
The interesting thing is and maybe Steve, our producer, would know this, or hell, even you, Chris, but it's 13-4.
Thanks a lot.
Well, I mean, 13-4 is that a usual upset deal? I know 12-5 most of the time is, right?
Right. Yeah. I saw something today. It was if you're trying to figure out your bracket, don't pick a 1, 2, or 3 seed to lose. Don't outthink yourself there, because they win about 90% of the time. But when you get to that 4 seed, there have been some, but Alabama's still obviously supposed to win this game.
I have the numbers here if you guys want them.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
13 seeds versus 4 seeds all time. They're 33 and 127.
Oh,
So you're saying
okay.
there's a chance.
Now compare that to the 12-5 matchup, which is the one that everybody talks about. 12 seeds are 57 and 103 all time.
Okay.
Ooh.
So
Yeah,
double the
big
wins.
difference. Big difference. I think still it gets down to matchups. You know, you can have a 4-13, but if it's the 13 has to face a 4, let's say, that has great guard play and that ain't their strength, then that 13's got an uphill climb. But if you're a 13 seed that can get hot and you got some slower, bigger guys, if that's
Yep.
what you do with your team, I don't care how big and physical you are, if you can't catch them and they're shooting the eyes out, they got a chance. So
Yep.
they're not all built the same, but it does, I think, come down to the style matchup when you're looking at upsets and who can pull off what.
And a lot of these teams, these smaller schools, when they're playing, conference play, their conference is usually built a certain way compared to, big time basketball. And so I would kind of I view it as like, even when we played smaller schools, whether it was a Georgia Southern, a Georgia State, Louisiana Monroe, hell, I'd even put Western Kentucky in there.
Yeah.
It was like, it wasn't the same as playing a big school, a Power
Not a
Five
Power
at
Five.
that time.
Yeah.
Because it was Power Five schools did what they did, and you understood that, and they weren't going to change. They were just going to say, hey, this is what we do. You're going to know what we do. We know what you do. We're going to line up and go play and see who wins, right? When you face smaller schools, all of a sudden schemes start changing. They could be 2-3 defense and all year long in their conference, and then all of a sudden they come out and they're playing man to open up, first round of March Madness, whatever it is. They're
Right.
running a motion offense. Now they're in a triangle offense. Like that's the tricky part. And that's how I viewed like those games for us in football. All right. They might've been a 4-3, and all of a sudden now they're in a 3-4. Now they're not base as much. Now they're in nickel or dime. And it's like, now they're bringing blitzes that they haven't shown on film because they don't have anything to lose. So they're trying to find an edge. And for them to find an edge over a Power Five school, those are the types of things they have to do, right? So that's the tricky part when you get into March Madness is you can watch all the play you want from conference play for these guys, but you still just never know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, how many times do we hear, even great teams y'all had where the other side may get the opening kick or on their first drive, they're moving the ball down the field, may stick it in the end zone on their first drive, and people are panicked. And I can't tell you how many times I interviewed Coach after the game and said, well, they didn't run anything. They've been running all year. But once we got settled down and figured it out,
right, ...
everything was fine. And so you definitely can deal with that in the tournament. Alabama taking on Hofstra in the first round. If they win, then in all likelihood they would play Texas Tech. That's a 5, but that is a matchup. I'll tell you right there. You talk about your 12-5. Akron, 29-5 on the year. I know in the MAC, you're not going to get the same respect as you do in a Power 4, or Power 5 in hoops because of the Big East. But man, let me tell you, Texas Tech is doing some work right now to make sure they've got the best scout they can get, because and they will have to work to get their team's attention. Nate Oats doesn't have to worry about getting his guys' attention. I don't know about Texas Tech late, but they probably feel pretty good playing the Zips, but they could be eliminated pretty quick if they're not careful there. But that's that's what Alabama will be facing, and they get to go to Tampa. I have nothing to do with winning and losing, but I do know that I will enjoy lunch poolside in Tampa more than I would if I were in Buffalo or, thank you, Jesus, I'm not in Portland this week. That's what I did not want to have to do. San Diego's a different story.
Yeah.
I'd be fine with San Diego. Please don't send me to Portland, for crying out loud. And thankfully, he blessed me with not having to go there. Women's basketball, congratulations. Also, Christy Curry's team at-large bid again. I think they've been 4 out of the last 5 years now that they've gotten bids to the tournament. So they will take on Rhode Island in their first-round game and Alabama as the 6th seed, playing in Louisville at that first-round matchup. All right, when we come back, we're going to go back to football for just a moment to wrap things up. The conversation about SEC win totals. Buddy Josh Pate has his projections out. Also, Coach's Corner with the head man of the Birmingham Stallions, A.J. McCarron, and we'll go short yardage. Nobody better to do that with than number 3, Trent Richardson. Stay with us. We are back with more of The Dynasty, a podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Back for our final segment this week on The Dynasty, a podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Let's, guys, take a look at it really was on Josh Pate's show, but it was one of the fan, I guess, the betting line sites had the projected 2026 SEC win totals. And we're talking off air. The numbers for Alabama, you felt, when you heard it, AJ, you kind of, I'm not going to say panic, but it was not a great reaction. But when you see it in relation to the others, tell me what you see out of this. What stands out about it to you with the projection? Is it just a gambling thing, or do you think there's some validity to what we're seeing with these numbers, and why?
Yeah. The Arch Manning hype is still real.
Okay.
Having Texas there. They were playing better as the year ended. I think Georgia, to me, I think Georgia's got to be the favorite to win. I mean, they should have a really good team. A&M, I can't buy into the hype. I did not think A&M was that good last year. As a whole, I think Marcel Reed has to take a big step forward if we're being honest from a passing standpoint and reading coverages. I think when you think back on games last year, South Carolina really confused him the whole first half, pre-snap, post-snap. He looked bad in the Miami game as well in the playoffs. Ole Miss, I think, getting a ton of hype because of Lane. You don't know how they're going to be. For his sake, you better hope that they have a successful year, or they'll run him out quick after 2 years if they don't do something.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm fine with it. I mean, there's just question marks for this Bama team. That's just being honest, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's question marks at the O-line. There's question marks for the run game. There's question marks at the quarterback position because it's a first-year starter. I mean, you don't know. The defense should be great from a secondary standpoint. You got a ton of returning starters there. Can they get better up front on the defensive front? I mean, can we find a true pass rusher, somebody that can, dominate the tackles out wide and put pressure on the quarterback? We haven't seen that in quite some time. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Trent, are you, when I look at it, and we'll save it for later, but without being just too much of a Bammer. I see 10 easily. And let me clarify. I don't feel like I'm going out on a limb where I look at 10 wins. And we'll get into all those later on. We got a lot of time to do that. But that number looks low to me. What about you? Not based on just what we normally anticipate and expect, because it's Alabama, but realistically.
I think it's low to me. And I know right now it's a big, question mark about the offense, in which it really is. But I still think they can, still have the will and it might at least go double digits this year. But like AJ said, man, it's so many question marks on the offense. And like I said, they got to have a great spring. And actually get those guys together. And these guys just got to, seal the deal with themselves and find their identity. And you don't have these type of conversations or people, talking about 8.5 wins. It's a disrespect for me, and it's like, man, this what we earned though. So we've earned this disrespect for right now. So I hope guys, seeing this stuff, or somebody's kind of putting this stuff in their ear, like there need to be a chip on your shoulder every time you work out, every time you dog it on, go to dog it on meetings. Every time you dog it on, step on that field, it need to be a chip on your shoulder, because that's a slap in the face when it comes to Alabama football. Even Georgia too, though. I feel like Georgia.
Yeah.
I think they'll go. But they are switching it this year to 9 games in the SEC.
Yes.
So
yes.
I guess this is kind of why the numbers are kind of down too. But that goes back to me saying, like, it's almost a unfair thing to make these kids, these young men, play, another 9-game season, possibly 10 if they make it to the SEC championship against the SEC, and have these type of numbers now, because you get that because we're beating on each other, right? So it's crazy, man. But yeah, the hype is real when it comes to Texas and Georgia. So I'm not puzzled by the 8.5 from Bama, but it's one of those things of like, man, like.
Yeah,
this got to be one of those.
Trying to get you to bet, baby. They're just trying to get you to bet. Let's and again, as a reminder, I'm not going to go through where everything is and all that, but I'll just quickly say East Carolina, Kentucky, Florida State, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas A&M, LSU, Vandy, Chattanooga, Auburn. That's your 12-game regular season. I see 10. We'll get into it later on. Before we go, we got to get to the coach's corner. AJ McCarron, the head man of the Birmingham Stallions. We are weeks away from opening up the season. Are we under a month now, Coach?
We are 2 weeks away.
2 weeks from the opening.
March 27th.
All right.
In Louisville, 7 o'clock on Fox.
So, wait a minute. In Louisville?
Yep.
That's a new franchise, right?
It is. Chris Redmond, head coach, very known in Louisville. His dad's a big-time coach. He was a big-time player at Louisville. It's going to be an awesome atmosphere. It's supposedly sold out, 15,000. So I'm sure the place will be rocking. And boys, we just got out of an inning. Sorry.
It's all right.
They had runners on second and third.
Clarify now. Tell them who they and we are.
World Baseball Classic, United States versus Dominican Republic. Dominican Republic had runners on second and third with 1 out. Tatis was up to bat. We struck him out. And then Marte was up to bat. And we struck him out to end the inning. Bednar was big in that. But yeah, it's going to be a great 2 weeks. We're going to finish out camp this week with practice tomorrow, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We'll make final cuts on Thursday. we'll have a fan event actually in Birmingham on the 20th. I'll fly out the night of cuts on the 19th, get to Birmingham, and then we'll have an event on the 20th, that Friday. We'll be doing media and everything else, fan event, all that, all day Friday, and then
Man, that's
be
this
back.
week.
Start practice for the first game of the year on Saturday, the 21st. We'll have players off day on Sunday, and then getting into the week, we'll practice Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, travel Thursday, and then be ready to go Friday night.
Plug for your if you know it. Sorry to put you on the spot if you don't, but that fan event where it's going to be. I will do this. Well, I'm sure it's on the Stallions website, but also my advice to your marketing people, you might want to have a few televisions turned on and up in that place. They'll be there for your event, but you might want to have a little NCAA tournament basketball going on in the background. Bama plays that day, but it'll be before your event.
Okay.
Just
there's also I know there's a lot going on, and then hell, even when we play our first home game April 18th, it's a Saturday 3:00 kickoff. We're having to rival against Morgan Wallen and concert in Tuscaloosa. So
hey, I will say this: the get-in price will be much more family friendly at the Stallions game that day.
Yeah, and we'll have a halftime show. It's supposed to be cool. I think it's down to a couple artists. They're trying to do like big halftime shows in the UFL this year and get big artists there at every game. So it'll be fun. I heard 3 finalists for Birmingham, and they're all pretty big names. So it'll be fun.
Awesome. All right. In addition to Coach's Corner, we also go short yardage, and nobody better to go short yardage with than that strong running back we got, Trent Richardson. What you got for your short yardage segment this week?
Man, really just looking at these running backs that's in the draft this year. The top 3 running backs they got Jeremiah Love, they got Price, also another running back from Notre Dame. They got Mike Washington from Arkansas. But the one I like the most is, of course, Jeremiah Love. He's one of those ones that can, he can hit the home run. He was a 4.3 guy at the combine. I know numbers don't, but when you got a guy that's I think it's 225, 230, something close to that. He might be a little bit bigger than that. Running a 4.3, catching the ball good. He's hitting the back cut a lot. That's what I like about him, that back cut, man. He can put that foot in the ground and go from 0 to 60. And then when it comes to, Price, man, Price, they had a 1-2 punch with them, but he's one of those guys that's bigger. I think he might be about 240, 245. He's not as fast as Love, but he can pull away from you. Watching all this film, he hit that back cut. And he run that power, pretty sweet, man. So looking at him, man, he's one of those guys that can catch it out the backfield too. And the biggest thing too, man, both of these guys are good blockers when it comes to protecting the quarterback. And skipping over to Mike Washington, I didn't see a lot of the cutting back. I just see them out running a lot of folks and catching screens out the backfield. But I think he ran a 4.3 at the combine. So I think the sky's the limit for him too. He probably be more of a I don't want to say a third down back, but he's going to be one of those backs that you can put in a situation where when it comes to getting him the ball, just throwing swinging routes, he's just going to outrun the linebacker and try to get to the next level. If he gets to the next level, you're not going to catch him for sure. But those the first 2 guys I mentioned, man, I like those guys a lot. And shout out to my young gun, man, Emmitt Smith Jr. He coming out this year, from Texas A&M. I always got to give shout out to home cooking, man, but he's kind of all around. He's been injured some, and I think he's gonna have a solid career when it comes to the next level. And I know it's hype around because his dad still leads the NFL in rushing. as the lead rusher for years. I think it's almost 30 years. I don't think nobody's ever going to break his record unless Derek do it. But it's one of those things, man, where you want hometown to do good, and I think he will. So that's all I got.
Hearing you on short yardage talk about Emmitt Smith Jr. When I was going to Alabama games and saw Emmitt Smith Sr. playing, same age that I was going to Birmingham Stallions games as a teenager as well, the original Stallions in the old USFL. Now we're talking that as well. Things going full circle. And yes, I'm old, and thank God I am.
You also seen Pistol Pete play too.
Yeah, the video clips. You guys getting older every week. I'm just telling you. I'm already there, but you guys getting older every week.
You was around for the 100-point game too, weren't you?
I was 6 months away from it, I think. I was 6 months away. I wasn't born yet.
Listen, Chris, to help that age a little bit, and you can come to our fan event at Brock's Gap Brewery in Hoover.
I know where that is. I know where it is.
From 4 to 6.
Yeah.
On the 20th.
All right. Brock's Gap Brewery, good hangouts right next to the Hoover Met. So it'll be a great place for it. Unfortunately, I will be in Tampa.
Well,
but
you could be there drinking beer.
I could be by that time. Well, no, we'll be in the second half, depending on how it's going. We'll determine that. You'll be able to tell if you tune in. Hey,
Harry, you got it.
You got it. Hey. Appreciate you guys. Really appreciate Steve Gorgie. He puts this together. You guys don't know how hard he works to put this together. And then we go completely off script at times. And God love him, he still shows up
before we
every
get
week.
Off, I don't think people realize, like, I think today, from a year from now, a year back, I think we all kind of agreed and sat at the table at Bum Hours. And we said this is what we're going to do. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
crazy.
It is. And it's awesome. It's been a lot of fun. Appreciate you both and Steve as well. For those gentlemen, I'm Chris Stewart. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week right here on The Dynasty, a podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide.